Hello and welcome to another video on the JJ Think Tank. Today I want to discuss Russian-Western relations in the context of this book, which is called Who Lost Russia? How the World Entered a New Cold War by Peter Conradi. Now, I don't know about you, but before, many times in the news, we heard a lot of Russian bashing, yes? So, if an event occurred, normally in these mainstream outlets and legacy media such as BBC News, Sky News, etc., you would read a comment or hear something along the lines of, "Oh, it was the Russians, it was the Ruskies, yes? The Russians did it." And this always struck me as strange. Why are they always blaming the Russians, yes? So, one particular event springs to mind now. And it concerns the recent comments made by an MI5 employee, yes. And he said that Russia is planning to cause havoc on the streets of the UK between migrants and the native population, yes. This is clearly propaganda. This is clearly a misrepresentation of the situation, yes, because the real cause for the problems that we see in the UK concerning multiculturalism lie with the government, yes, with the capitalist business class in the West that imports all of these foreign aliens, yes, illegal migrants, and legal, as we can say as well, in many cases, who really are not compatible with Western civilization and Western culture. And as it's clear to me, a multicultural society eventually leads to chaos, yes, because there's no common culture, there's no common ethic, and this is just a natural process, yes? If you import so many foreigners that are of a different culture and language, yes, what do you expect? So it's obviously not the Ruskies' fault, it's not the Russians' fault that this is occurring in many major Western cities, yes, in London, in Paris. We hear all the time about murder occurring or a woman being raped and so forth, yes. So leading on from this thought of mine is that this book is more balanced, yes, in its assessment of Russia and the West and what has occurred over the past, let's say, 30 years. Although, of course, it still contains many errors and biases, which I will name and mention. The book gives a picture of why the relationship has broken down, and that it was caused both by the West and Russia, yes? So, we'll begin with reading some sections of the article, and then I'll end the video with some of my own comments, yes? If it's necessary. So I included at the start a quote that I thought is quite prescient, yes? It's suitable for this discussion, because it boils down to the concrete fact that the West's attempts to intervene and change a country in its image usually does not work, yes, for many reasons. In the end, we might not know the exact reasons, but nonetheless, countries see this occurring, and therefore they are skeptical as to what the West wants. Yes, what is actually the goal? Is it to genuinely build up a country, make it more prosperous and wealthier? Or in essence, is the West trying to subjugate countries on the sly, yes? They intervene in the name of freedom, democracy, and liberal values and human rights, but is it actually something else going on? Is there actually something else going on, yes? Are there other more cynical motives, yes, involved? Namely, economic domination, yes? So the quote goes like this: "I'll be honest with you. We, of course, would not want to have a democracy like in Iraq," Putin reported, prompting laughter from the press corps. Yes, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Yes, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. This is what it all boils down to. Yes, Russia is skeptical as to what the West actually wants from her. Yes, do they want to lift us up or not? Yes. So now, the main reason why there is this rivalry between Russia and the West is because Russia itself is the geopolitical heartland, using a term formulated by Dugin, but also previously formulated by other well-known geopoliticians, yes? For instance, Halford Mackinder, who was the first to notice that Russia is the heartland, and that the strategy of the West is to make it weak in order for a strong Eastern bloc not to arise. Yes? And so, keeping this in mind, it's no wonder that we can constantly see the West and Russia embroiled, yes, in a contest over dominance. This great game, as it's also called, yes. So all these proxy states, really, in essence, that are surrounding Russia, they're used to weaken it, yes, and also to gain control over economic assets and thus development. Because either it will flow to Russia or it will flow to the West, all these resources, yes, that then build up an economy. So yes, as I just said, the Western strategy is to undermine any territorial integrity of Russia, break it up, and to then subsequently introduce a federal system that would bring democracy and liberalism in the country, supposedly, yes. The Russian strategy is, of course, the opposite. More power resides in the Kremlin, and their mode of government is more authoritarian. Yes, so Moscow has more power, and all the other areas of Russia are underneath Moscow. Now, perhaps we shouldn't be so cynical. Maybe the West would be able to implement such a system in Russia that would make it a better functioning society and more prosperous for the citizens. In an ideal world, this should be the aim. But is this really the aim of the West as well? We don't know. It's hard to tell. I'm not sure. Now, moving on from this, now I'd like to mention something about Conradi himself and the errors and biases that he included in his work, in my opinion. Yes. So, Conradi, he's one of these establishment types, yes? He works for the Sunday Times. So he, of course, will keep on harping on about the idea that the West wants to bring freedom, democracy, and human rights across the world, yes? And he also accepts these various debunked theories, such as 9/11 being orchestrated by Al-Qaeda. That's clearly a lie. So much evidence that proves otherwise, yes? Climate change is also a lie. There's no such thing as man-made climate change. And Russian election interference. So this was in the 2020 election. Again, that was a hoax. That was a lie. But besides this and some other minor issues, on the whole I thought his assessment to be quite balanced, yes? But I'd also like to note, as you probably have noticed already, you've assumed this already, that I do not share his sentiment regarding diversity, openness and liberalism. I don't think these are values worth pursuing, and this is based on my personal experience and my thought process. Yes. So what is good about the book is that Conradi notes that the West made many unlawful blunders in the Middle East. It pushed too hard on NATO expansion. It bombed Yugoslavia unlawfully. Yes. And during the Yeltsin years, when it had a chance to implement its system, the Western system, yes, it instead essentially stole a lot of wealth from Russia. So a lot of privatization occurred, but the chief beneficiaries of this privatization were the Russian oligarchs, yes, these businessmen, well-connected businessmen. It didn't flow down to the general population. Surprisingly, I was shocked at this. He also notes how the West funds colour revolutions worldwide with the help of the CIA. The CIA is really the main actor behind these colour revolutions. And from the narrative, this was my interpretation, yes, we could see that in general the West acts out a very dishonest style of diplomacy, yes. It's backstabbing, yes, it's dishonest, and if an agreement is made, usually these agreements are then scuppered, yes. So there's no fair play, a reciprocity where if country A does a favour in the geopolitical world, in this sphere, yes, then it should expect something in return, yes. But the West does not heed these rules. They don't follow this honest style. One example being, for instance, Minsk, yes, these Minsk agreements, when the war just started in Ukraine. So these Minsk agreements took place, I believe, roughly in 2015. They were made, but then subsequently straight away pretty much broken, yes, by the Ukrainians with the aid of the West. Yes. Moreover, hypocrisy reigns supreme. As Western countries, they're usually quick to lecture others on human rights, but the West, the West as a bloc, they also do trade with these countries. For instance, Saudi Arabia, yes, but not a word is usually mentioned about what goes over there, what goes on over there. So I found this quote to be quite funny and to the point. So it was made by a man called Kiselyov. I believe he was a member of the government in Russia for a while. And he said, England doesn't do fair play. It doesn't play honestly. And he backs this up with many previous historical occurrences, such as England intervening and funding the Bolshevik Revolution, and so forth, yes? Now, concerning more recent events and Trump's election, I also didn't understand the sentiment shared by Conradi. So he was very anti-Trump in his writing. But in my view, Trump, he has this pragmatic business approach that would actually help to improve Russian-Western relations by promoting, investment into the country. But then, right after, he was very good, yes, in his assessment of the situation in Ukraine. And what I found important is how he mentioned Yanukovych and his idea of bridging Ukraine between the East and the West. Yes. So as a way of bridging the two land masses. But he wasn't allowed to fulfill this vision because the European Commission forced Yanukovych to choose between Russia and Europe. And this was not good advice in the circumstances. Of course, now Ukraine has the corrupt man Zelensky, and we all know the legacy that he has left for Ukraine. A devastated country, yes. So finally, talking about the domestic developments and affairs of Russia, from Conradi's narrative, we can come to the conclusion that until around 2013, a marked improvement, yes, in GDP, but for the citizens. But after that, according to Conradi, there's been a decline, yes. So it's difficult to say whether this is true or not. I guess the best way is to speak to the average citizen in Russia, yes. And I have spoken with some people from the country, and they back up this claim, yes. But then again, also recently, we discovered that Russia is the fourth largest economy in the world in PPP terms, yes? Purchasing power parity terms. So, it's difficult. It's difficult. So I think, yes, that's all I wanted to say concerning this book and Russian-Western relations. I think now the tide has turned and it's too late too late for the West to bring back Russia into its orbit. Too many deals were scuppered. The West acted too dishonestly, especially with regards to NATO expansion, yes. And it's pretty much impossible to prevent the consolidation of this Eastern Bloc that contains China, Russia and Iran. So over the next century, you can definitely see this bloc being stronger and stronger, to the detriment of the West, really, at the end of the day. Yes, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it informative. Please leave a like and subscribe if possible, because it will help me to really grow the channel and share more vital information. Have a good day.